Eirik met his gaze.
So does the road you chose.
The older man spat onto the earth, then turned and melted into the trees, moving with the practiced ease of a man who knew the forest as well as any hunter. The remaining man followed, dragging the bowman by the arm, leaving a smear of blood in the needles. The wolves slunk after them, their tails low. Silence returned in slow layers. Eirik stood, breathing hard, the trader leaning against him. The bear remained a moment longer watching, then it turned and lumbered away into the trees, vanishing as if it had never existed. Eirik exhaled, and his breath came out like a laugh that did not want to be laughed at. Courage began to dwell. What was once effort became bearing, but the cost was real. His legs throbbed, his jaw ached. His body shook with a delayed tremor. Now the danger had passed. The trader coughed and clutched his ribs.
Thank you,
he whispered. Eirik tightened his grip on the man's arm.
We are not safe yet.
They moved south through the forest, slower now, Eirik supporting the trader and leaning heavily on his spear at times. The tracks of wolves faded. The ravens followed overhead again, silent watchers. As the sun began to drop, the forest opened into a stretch of lower trees near the river. There, in the slanting light, Eirik saw something that made him stop. Another strip of cloth hung from a branch, not bloodied this time, clean, tied in a deliberate knot. A marker? Eirik's throat went tight. He looked around and saw two more such cloth strips, each tied at a different angle, each placed as if guiding a path. The older man had not improvising. He had been running a trail through the forest, marking routes, moving people. They take men, the trader had said. Eirik stared at the markers and felt something settle in him, heavier than fear. A name thinned through quiet concessions. No trumpet sounded, no witness marked the change. Still, something lessened. If he returned to his village now and simply warned them, would they listen? Would they believe? Or would they do what men always did when fear wore the mask of prudence and decide it was better not to provoke shadows? Eirik imagined the elders nodding, saying, "We will watch. We will be cautious." He imagined them doing nothing. He imagined the older man returning with wolves and men and something worse, taking someone else on the road, and someone else, until the valley learned obedience. Eirik looked at the trader. The man's eyes were dull with pain. He was alive only because Eirik had stepped across his own threshold. That was the thing. Courage was not a single battle won. It was the refusal to yield the road, again and again.
Can you make it to the village?
Eirik asked. The trader swallowed.
Slow, but yes.
Eirik nodded. He guided the man toward the river path that would lead back. Then he stopped. The trader looked at him, confused. "You're not coming?" Eirik's leg throbbed, and fear tried one more time to offer its counsel. "Go home. Heal. Rest. Let others handle it." But Eirik saw the cloth markers again. He saw the hidden road. He heard the older man's words. This will not end. Life shortened for every man. The timid counted years. The bold counted deeds. Eirik touched the wolf tooth at his throat. He thought of his father's silence at the frozen lake. He thought of how cold had taught him what words could not. He looked at the trader.
Tell them what you saw. Tell them there are men in the forest who move like hunters and use wolves like dogs. Tell them I am following their trail.
The trader's eyes widened.
Alone?
Eirik's mouth tightened.
Not every path allows company.
The trader hesitated.
They will call you foolish.
Eirik almost smiled.
Let them.
He turned back toward the forest. The ravens shifted overhead, following. As he walked, the pain in his leg became a steady beat, like a drum that marked time. He was not swift now. but he was moving. Each step was a choice made while fear still stood beside him. The markers led him deeper north. The trees thickened again, the light dimmed. The wind rose in the higher branches, making a sound like distant surf. Eirik followed the cloth strips for hours until twilight thickened into night. When darkness settled fully, he made a small fire in a hollow between rocks, shielded from view. He ate dried meat and drank from a skin. He cleaned his wolf bite as best he could, gritting his teeth. He wrapped it in clean cloth. Then he sat, listening. The forest was alive at night, in a different way. Small animals moved, owls called. Once, far off, a wolf howled, then another answered. Eirik watched the flames. Fear still knocked, it always would, but it no longer commanded. Within, a steadiness formed. Storms still came, fear still knocked, but it no longer held the bar. In the morning he moved again. The land rose toward the northern hills, the pines thinned, giving way to rock and scrub. The path became harder, narrower, and the kind of terrain where a misstep could snap an ankle send a man tumbling into a ravine. By midday he reached a ridge and saw in the valley below something that made his stomach go cold. Stones? Not boulders, not random rock, but standing stones arranged in a ring, dark against the green. Smoke rose from a fire at the ring's centre, and men moved around it, small as ants from his distance. And on the outer edge of the ring, tied to posts, were shapes that could only be wolves. Eirik crouched behind a rock and watched. He counted men, 6, maybe 8, hard to tell. He saw the older man with the raven's staff moving among them. He saw another figure, taller, wearing a cloak of feathers, face hidden. A shiver ran through him. Not superstition, and recognition. These were not simple bandits. This was ritual mixed with threat, theatre mixed with power. He watched as 2 men dragged someone toward the stones. A captive? A captive fought weakly. Eirik could not see the face. It could have been anyone. It could have been a young man from his village who had gone hunting alone. It could have been a traveller. Eirik's mouth went dry. If he acted now, alone, he would likely die. If he retreated, someone else would vanish into this ring. The untravelled road waited in silence. Many measured its length. Few took a step. Eirik's hands tightened around his spear. He did not rush. He studied. There was a slope on the left side of the ring where the stones were closer to the ridge. A narrow gully led down, covered in brush. He could descend unseen, perhaps. The wolves were tied, but wolves were wolves. They would smell him. He watched the men who stood with axes. One had a bow, another held a torch. The feather-cloaked figure stood near the captive, head bowed as if speaking. The old man lifted his raven staff and pointed at the captive. The captive cried out. Eirik's stomach turned. Delay fed doubt. Doubt fattened quickly. Hesitation built its own prison. He had no time for counsel. He moved. He slid down the gully, keeping low and using brush to cover his tracks. Stones scraped his boots. His wounded leg protested, but he forced it. Halfway down, a wolf's head snapped toward him. The animal's nose lifted. It growled, low. Eirik froze. The men near the ring turned. The older man's head lifted, eyes scanning. For a heartbeat, the whole valley held its breath. Then the wolf barked sharply. The men shouted. The bowman raised his bow. Eirik surged out of the brush and ran straight toward the ring. It was madness. It was the only move left. Arrows hissed. One struck the ground near his feet. Another grazed his shoulder, tearing cloth and skin. Pain flared hot. Eirik kept running. The wolves lunged against their ropes, snarling. Men rushed to intercept him. Eirik threw his spear. The spear flew true and struck one of the axemen in the chest, knocking him back. The man fell. Eirik drew his axe and leapt over the low stone. 2 men came at him. He met the first with a slash across the forearm, forcing the man to drop his weapon. He kicked the second in the knee, then drove his shoulder into him. He was not winning cleanly, he was surviving violently. A blow struck his ribs. He gasped and stumbled. Then fall came. He hit the ground hard, stones biting his palms, his vision blurred. Someone grabbed him by the hair and yanked his head back. The older man's face loomed above him, furious now.
I told you,
The older man hissed.
the road has teeth.
Eirik tasted blood. He laughed once, sharply.
So do I.
The older man struck him across the face with a staff. Stars burst. Eirik went limp for a breath, then surged, driving his elbow into the older man's gut. The older man grunted and staggered. Eirik rolled and reached for the rope nearest him. The captive was tied to a post near the stones. Eirik crawled, knife in hand, and cut the ropes as fast as he could. The captive collapsed into him, sobbing. It was a boy, 15 or 16, face streaked with dirt and tears. Not from his village, a stranger, which meant there were more. Eirik hauled the boy up.
Run!
He hissed.
Go! Down the gully! Do not stop!
The boy stared at him, trembling. Eirik shoved him. The boy stumbled, then ran. A wolf lunged again, rope straining. One rope snapped. The wolf broke free. It turned not toward the boy, but toward Eirik, drawn by blood and movement. Eirik stood swaying, knife raised. The wolf charged. Eirik braced, but his ribs screamed. His leg throbbed. His shoulder burned. He was too slow. The wolf hit him, knocking him down. Teeth snapped at his throat. Eirik jammed his forearm under the wolf's jaw, holding it off. The wolf's breath was hot and rancid. His eyes were pale, wild. Eirik's hand found a stone. He drove the stone into the wolf's snout. Once, twice. The wolf recoiled just enough. Eirik thrust his knife up into its chest. The wolf shuddered, then sagged. Eirik rolled away, gasping. Blood fell from brave men as from cowards, yet one rose with teeth set, the other crawled. Eirik pushed himself up. Around the ring men were shouting. The feather-cloaked figure had vanished into the trees, slipping away like smoke. The older man was bleeding from the mouth now, eyes sharp with hatred. The remaining wolves snarled, ropes straining, but they did not break free again. Eirik staggered toward the gully. An arrow struck the ground near him. Another hit his thigh, shallow but painful. He grunted and kept moving. He reached the brush and fell into it, sliding down the slope, half on his feet and half on his knees, branches tearing his cloak. Behind him the older man's voice carried, thin and furious.
Run, Wolfborn! Run back to your hall! You cannot fight what is coming!
Eirik did not answer. He did not have breath for words. He had breath for movement. When he finally reached the lower forest, he found the boy waiting, crouched behind a fallen log, eyes wide with fear. You came, the boy whispered. Eirik nodded once. His face was pale.
We keep moving.
They walked south for 2 days. Eirik's wounds stiffened. His legs swelled. His ribs made each breath sharp, but he did not stop. He could not stop. Stopping would let pain become an excuse. Stopping would let fear speak again. On the 3rd day they reached the river path near Eirik's valley. The boy's steps quickened at the sight of open land, as if air itself became easier away from the stones. They found the village at dusk. Men came running, shouting, startled to see Eirik limping with a boy beside him, both bloodied and half-starved. The elders gathered in the hall. Torches flared. Faces turned toward Eirik with a mix of fear, admiration and suspicion. What happened? One elder demanded. Eirik stood before them, shoulders squared despite the pain. He did not embellish. He did not make himself heroic. He told them of the cart, the trader, the wolves, the men, the standing stones. When he spoke of the captive, the boy stepped forward and lifted his chin, and the hall went quiet. Eirik watched the villagers' faces. Some looked away, some leaned forward. Some frowned as if trying to find a way to make the story smaller. Others lingered, at the edge of the decision. They speak of timing and wait for certainty. Seasons pass them by. He could already hear it in their silence, the cautious counsel, the desire to avoid trouble. Eirik took a slow breath and let his steadiness fill the room.
I went alone,
He said.
not because I wanted glory, because no one else moved.
A murmur ran through the hall. Eirik's gaze swept them.
Fear will walk with you.
He continued.
It will stand beside your hearth and tell you to wait. It will say the forest is far. It will say the stones are not your concern.
He paused.
But men are already being taken. If you do nothing, the road will come to you.
He did not threaten. He did not plead. He simply stood. Those who act stand differently in the hall. Speech carries weight when it is backed by trial. Even silence is heard. The oldest elder, a woman with white hair as frost, studied Eirik for a long time. Then she nodded once. You have brought us proof, she said, and you have brought us shame. Her eyes moved to the others. Now choose. The hall held its breath again. Eirik watched. Men who had spoken loudly of strength not swallow, and looked down. He watched younger men glance at him, seeing not a legend but a mirror. He watched women shift, considering their sons. Truth and courage were close kin. Once a thing was seen, it demanded a step. Finally a man rose, then another, then another. Not all, not enough to fill the hall, but enough to matter. Eirik felt something in his chest loosen, a knot he had carried for years. A name gathered strength through the chosen hardship. It travelled ahead without escort. Doors opened quietly. He did not crave being known. He craved being able to look in the mirror without turning away. Later, after plans were made, after food was brought, and the boy was given a place near the fire, Eirik stepped outside the hall alone. The night was clear. Stars shone up of the valley. The wind moved through the grass like a slow hand. He stood and listened. Fear was there, as always, standing at the edge of the firelight. It would never leave him. It would never stop knocking. It would appear in new forms, in new battles, in moments where the outcome was uncertain. But it no longer commanded. He touched the wolf tooth under his shirt and breathed. Life shortens. Opportunities close. Only what was faced remains as substance. The rest thins like smoke. Behind him, voices rose in the hall, not boastful, not drunken, purposeful. Men speaking of routes and supplies, of who would go, of who would stay, of how to move at dawn. Eirik let himself feel the weight of that. Not triumph, reckoning. Fear walked with all men, the brave walked with it and did not yield the road. Thus a life was shaped. Above the hall, a raven crossed the moon, wings silent, heading north.